Yeah.
So yesterday we had talked about Paticca Samuppada, or Samuppada, as they say in Thailand, um, and gotten about halfway into it. One place that we had stopped was by not giving the right Pali word, and that Pali word needs to be understood a little bit. That Pali word is Salayatana,
Hmm.
and what the word Salayatana is not atana. The atana itself are the eyes and the ears and the nose and the sense organs, and let us say the the um, the neural networks that are associated with those things that tie them right into the brain would be the atana. But then there's an internal representation of that is the salayatana. And that one of the examples that the Buddha uses about the salayatana is that it's like a tree, the atana, the reality that's out there that can be sensed with the eyes. But by the time we get it as a representation, it's more like a shadow of a tree. And one of the qualities of the real tree is that it's got real limbs and real leaves and real bark. But the shadow doesn't have all of the details, and it doesn't have any sense of reality itself.
So, can we ever, at the earlier step of consciousness, you phrased it like it sounded like it was never possible to actually be aware of uh, things things, if you can even call them in consciousness, like the pure hearing consciousness, for example.
Well, what we as humans find out actually is that the senses themselves are extraordinarily inadequate. That the eye does not take in all of reality that
Mm-hmm.
could be visible to some of the eyes that can see. For instance, insects that draw nectar from a flower will see radiations coming off of those flowers from a very great distance, but a human will have to get up to see if there's any nectar there or not.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you're going to make sure that all of the nectar in a particular flower garden is being collected, every bee has to go to every flower. But if there are markers being left that are completely visible to the bees that are not visible at all to the humans, then they can make a clean, quick getaway. Because no flower is going to be visited twice. Okay, so this is an example of the fact that the other one we'd already talked about, and that is dogs, and that our sexuality has turned visual to where we came out of mammalian roots, out of being mammals, and their sexuality is connected deepestly with olfactory sensation. So now that we're looking at it from this, how do we define reality is based upon our senses. We do not know what real reality is because we do not have all of the senses that would be able to detect all of reality. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so it sounds a bit like the philosopher Kant said that we can't see the thing in itself, but just our the representation that's created from senses and some.
Right. And so the senses themselves are inadequate, the processing is inadequate, and the internal representation then is also inadequate. When I use the word inadequate, being not perfect,
Yeah.
it is not up to scratch. This is one of the reasons why we have scientific equipment, high-speed cameras, so that we can slow things down. That's another way that humans are not capable of actually seeing reality, is because some things are too fast. Another one is that if you had 5 or 6 or 9 cameras from all different kinds of levels while you're watching a magician perform card tricks or other things like this, and then process those 9, 10 camera images and watch closely for the right time, you can see exactly what he's doing because you're seeing it from every angle. But from the angle of the audience, it looks magic to them because they cannot see reality because it's intentionally hidden from them. This is what propaganda is when we turn it from visual magic arts and prestidigitation into verbal arts. So that the news now becomes not real news about what happened, but it's an inflection based upon the attitudes of the people who are selling the news.
Okay.
So I ask you this question now. What possible reality do you think exists out there?
Yeah.
And so this is where we're really beginning now to address ignorance. Look how ignorant we really are. That our eyes cannot see all of the light. That our ears cannot hear all of the sounds. That the dogs can sit here right on the porch and smell things that I don't have a clue about. I can go to the refrigerator and get one of these little packets of cheese in its envelope, the little plastic thing. And before I get from the kitchen back to the front, the dogs are right there. They can smell that cheese while it's still in its plastic. And you can't do that. And there's a whole lot of stuff that happens right there in public with pheromones and all kinds of information that's being given off, and none of the people in that vicinity know about those kinds of information, but a dog will. But the dog will also be missing a whole bunch of stuff that the humans are catching on to. And so in that regard, the dog lives in a different world than the humans do.
Yes.
And this is also giving back to the point of ignorance. There is just so much that we do not know. And that most of what we know is just trying to fill in the holes instead of leaving the holes as they are. That we invent things. We have ideas about things. I remember this when I was quite young in psychology. I recognized that I can invent more programs that need to be written than I could ever write in a lifetime. And now there's so many millions of people writing that code, and it's all been written. I didn't have to.
Yeah, there seemed to be some like I had that thought 3 weeks ago or so, that it's just so hard to plan for the future because you never know what's gonna happen. Maybe climate change will hit and everything will look totally different in 3 decennia.
Yes.
But there seem to be general rules that people follow and that are useful, like certain principles, like work hard on what's important for you, or is a better guideline than to just sit at home watching TV. So that's kind of a maybe a bit of a stupid example, but it comes to my head that there seem to be certain ways where you don't really predict what's going to happen because you just have mental representations which may be very inaccurate, but they still lead to better outcomes than other sorts of thinking and behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes, just like W is better than Z.
Just like W is better than C?
Yes. And B is better than W.
Not sure I understand.
Well, Z comes last. It's the last thing. What came before that? I mean, if you got a line, if you start at the best and go to the worst, then Z is at the end. W's got to be better than Z. Isn't that the way people think? That's why they climb up the ladder. And I use those examples is because they're still way down low at the bottom of the ladder, mostly because they're making really ignorant models of what things could be like. And that's what ordinary people do. That's what keeps them ordinary at that lowest level of ordinary rather than being nobly ordinary. Everybody's ordinary, but you can be not just ordinarily ordinary, you can be nobly ordinary. And how is that? Because the nobles can feel the way they want to feel rather than feeling the way that they're in the habit of feeling.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be even better to feel the way you want to feel while working towards something that also creates a future with better resources for yourself and the people around you, more supportive structures, maybe financial or community
Perhaps,
structure.
but you use the word work.
Mm-hmm.
And work always has the quality of doing something you don't want to do because you're expecting some kind of outcome, which means you're not really satisfied with how things are yet. So now maybe you've moved from B up to U. And you still don't have control of your feelings because you're still not feeling completely satisfied and you want to work at something.
Mm. Yeah, I think I was using it this way. Yeah, right. I can imagine a way where you would have both together, but I'm not sure how I would call it then, if not work. That you're calmly abiding, basically.
Let's
But
say this. This is a concept that may be of some use at this point, but is within a particular context. The concept that we can put into English language would be called duty to the Dhamma. That we actually have a duty to the Dhamma. Everybody has a duty to the Dhamma, but many of us handle that duty ignorantly. Basically, what that means, the duty to the Dhamma is that if you break your duty to the Dhamma, the result will be suffering. But when you're doing your duty to the Dhamma, there is no suffering. Or you're in the process of eliminating and reducing suffering. So that then could be taken that there eventually comes a time in a Dhamma dude's life when he is practicing generosity noble generosity, he winds up understanding two things. One is that the Dhamma itself is priceless. The Dhamma is priceless. It has no price to it. It is so valuable that that's actually the only thing that you can do with it is give it as a gift, because there's no possible way for anybody to pay the price. And so it not only has to be given as a gift, but it winds up being the very, very best gift that can be given. And in that regard, if there is noble Dhamma, then it is through some sort of obligation that goes deep into our genes down to humanity, that we are obligated to share that Dhamma with others so long that it's shared correctly. Because what happens is that people say, oh, well, I want to share the Dhamma, but I want to make a living too. And now they polluted it. Oh no, when the Dhamma is so priceless that it can only be given as freely as a gift. And that's the way that the Dhamma has been traditionally taught and given in Asia. And that's the way that I have been taught, that I do have a duty to the Dhamma. Part of the duty is that if anyone knows the Dhamma, then they are obligated to avoid suffering in their own life. But now they also become obligated in a way of helping others, because when the whole planet, just one person at a time, begins to come out of suffering, and that one or two people can share it with 10 or 20, and then each one of those can share it with another 5 or 10 or whatever like that, it will spread.
But why hasn't that happened in the last 2,500 years?
Because the old method was the way that the Buddha taught, which was that you teach people within the model that they're in. So if people are believing in rebirth, and you use their belief in rebirth to teach them basic Dhamma, which would be Sila. And surprisingly enough, and this is a good example of it, is that it doesn't work. People who believe in a form of karma wind up not being the most moral people. It even seems like that in the West, that atheists, they've got it by the county, so that the population of a particular county will either lean towards being Christian or lean towards being atheist. And all of the all of the Christian counties wind up having more domestic violence, more alcohol abuse, more drug abuse, more criminality, more active police, and more jail sentences than those counties that have a higher population of atheists. Why are the atheists behaving better than the Christians? I mean, after all, Christianity, it would seem, would teach morality. Doesn't it? Doesn't Christianity teach morality? Sin and all of that? Oh, wait a minute. They teach not morality, they teach forgiveness with morality.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, you can get forgiven. Go and sin again. Pay the church a little and put it in the offering plate, and depends upon what ceremony you do or some ritual.
Mm.
And then you can go and do it again.
Yeah, but there's also a question of correlation and causation. I think I would imagine that the Christian counties have a lower socioeconomic status and education, maybe, and that atheism
Right.
is higher correlated.
Exactly. Which indicates then that Christianity, even in your model, is a failure. Why? Because it's actually not teaching people to be moral. And they wind up being immoral, and along with their immorality, they're less educated, they're less wealthy, etc., etc. And that's what beliefs in magic will do to people. If you believe in magic, then you're trying to get it to be used for you in some kind of way. And so the same thing will happen within the Buddhist community. And on Reddit, you see the Western Buddhists do this, is that they will cling to a belief system that the Buddha used to teach morality, to teach sila, and yet you wind up seeing people breaking that very sila that the Buddha teaches. They would think that, well, if you do believe in rebirth and reincarnation and karma and all of that, that you would at least behave yourself among other Buddhists. And no, not at all. Out and out lies, malicious gossip.
I've especially seen that on the few times I was on the Buddhism and maybe Theravada Reddit, that's quite narrow and almost, sometimes religious in view.
Mm-hmm.
While on Stream Entry in the Mind Illuminated, people seem to have more of this atheist kind of view. And where was I going with this? So there's a difference between, I guess, where people are coming from to the Dharma, I guess, and the atheists maybe have another, maybe they believe more in every view has its own right, while you are clearly saying, okay, there is kind of one noble Dharma which you can find.
Yes. That I've also understood that there is the idea that our way is right no matter what, which would be the religious group. And then there would be the egalitarian, or the everybody's opinion is worthwhile and equal. And you could almost see that as the dogmatic, even though you would think that they would belong to ordinary right view because they're dogmatic in their rigidity about their beliefs. You would put that actually in wrong view. And then those that says everybody's opinion is worthwhile, trying to be egalitarian, resolve the thing, they only go then to ordinary right view, but they don't move to noble right view, because noble right view actually does have a not an anything goes or any opinion is worthwhile, but rather every opinion needs to be thoroughly investigated. Needs to be investigated, in fact, in three ways. The first one is that it has to fit with all we know about modern physical science, including all of the senses that we have that are being, let us say, enhanced and influenced by scientific equipment. So that the thermometers will have a better gauge of temperature changes than merely the skin, which is more subjective. Because there's moisture on the skin, that a breeze will change the skin temperature, but it won't change it on a thermometer unless you wrap that thermometer in a wet cloth, and then you can get it. So the point that we're making here is that after we get through all of modern physics, that's where we then start looking at Buddhism is from a completely reality situation that we can best come up with. In fact, this goes back to something that happened with the Dalai Lama many years ago, before he got really famous, and a journalist asked him if science ever disagreed with Buddhism, what would you do? And the Dalai Lama said unhesitantly, we would go with the science, because that's what we've been doing all along. But you see, within the Western context, is that no, our belief system is more important than science. But within Buddhism, we go for, oh no, science is the best thing to go for. That's where we foundation. That's our foundation. And so we start to look at what's the possibility of rebirth through the physical reality of the situation. Well, rebirth, the way they tell the story is that everybody's got a soul. That soul is unique and defines who they are. And not only that, but it defines their future for them in the sense of either a God's going to take a look at that soul and say, I'll keep it, or I'm going to throw it out. But also the karma machine, basically, the God of the Christians is nothing more than the wizard that's behind the screen, just doing the Wizard of Oz tricks of the working of the karma machine. And so both of them have that idea that there is a soul, and that soul has to have enough facets on it so that it becomes unique. For example, you'll have a whole busload of people die, a huge building collapse, thousands of people die. What's the karma machine going to do with 100,000 deaths like at Hiroshima? What's a karma machine to do? Because one of the qualities of the karma machine, nobody says, well, sometimes when a whole lot of people die all at the same time, the karma gets mixed up. And so person A gets half a person B's karma and half a person C's karma. Nobody ever tells that story, so that's not part of the question. The point is that every soul gets his own comeuppance. His good actions are going to stay with him to give him good results, and his bad actions are going to stay with him until he gets results. That means that every soul is unique. And if there's 7 billion people, that means that we need enough digits or some kind of information system to hold for 7 million people. But wait a minute, the Buddhists believe worms and animals and ghosts and all kinds of things, so we're going to have to bump that up, not from a 9 or 12-digit number, but maybe up to a 30-digit number in order to accommodate all the complexity of all the various souls that are being tracked by this karma machine. And when you begin to look at it like that, what is that there inside of the human being that has such sophistication that is even more sophisticated than our DNA? And yet our DNA breaks right down. Everything breaks down. Everything is temporary. What can be of this complexity that's within the human being that's going to survive death, whether it's in a form of energy or whether it's in a form of matter? And so when you begin to look at souls and things like that from physics, you can see, wait a minute, just like prestidigitation or just like stage magic, there is always some reality built in there. That sometimes they take a big chance. For instance, Houdini at one time didn't get out of the handcuffs in time, and they had to bust that water thing open to save his life. Okay, so reality comes into the situation, and the reality says there is no possibility of the kind of soul that Christians and Hindus and all of them believe. But these things were believed way back, 2, 3, 4,000 years ago, before we had the kind of science that we have today that can prove that wrong. People didn't know. Maybe there is a soul. Maybe it is complicated enough to where and strong enough that it's going to survive death, and complicated enough that it can be identified as a me in there.
Yeah, what I sometimes I don't really see a reason to believe in a soul, even though on some level I probably behave as if I do. But
all right, here's one of the reasons why people would believe in that kind of thing. One is that it answers the question of I don't want to die. Well, why would somebody say, I don't want to die? Well, there's a natural instinctual thing that's built into each human being, in fact, all the mammals. No animal wants to die because we have this instinctual desire called the self-preservation instinct. And that system operates most primarily on, because it's a survival instinct, that means that its job is to detect danger. And the mechanism whereby humans detect danger is through the feeling of fear. And so when we live in a reptilian-minded world, which means we're not fully conscious and fully thinking, and we live in an instinctual world, then our instinctual world is built in a basis of how much fear do we have going on right now? How safe are we? And what do I need to get safe? When there's a lot of ignorance in that, then that means that, oh, I need a lot of money to be safe. And that some emperors then, especially one of China, and also you can look at the pharaohs, that after people get enormously wealthy, so that they've got enough wealth to protect them safety, they still are facing death. And they don't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's where these stories of magic comes in. The priest comes in, oh, Mr. Pharaoh, I've got some special magic over here. If you pay me half a pyramid, I'll do this same service and we'll mummify your body. And someday in the future, you'll come alive again. You can hear that lie being told, concocted up. The priests don't believe in rebirth at all, but they're going to sell it to the Pharaoh and they're going to get rich off of it because they know how bad he wants to live.
That's interesting. So you could kind of trace religion back to this fear of dying.
Yes. All religion can be traced back to the fear of dying, fear of death. You see, the dogs don't have that fear of death because they don't put two and two together. They don't have that frontal cortex. You can look at a dead corpse and say, there I am. The dog doesn't do that. They look at a dead corpse and say, what is this? Wow, this thing smelled. I used to know this. This was a dog once, but they never connect it. Oh, this is going to happen to me too.
Now, have you ever heard of terror management theory?
No.
It's like, in very short, it's a theory where they've done quite extensive research from what I've seen actually in psychology that says that people are basically afraid of dying, and we put a lot of effort into forgetting about that or finding a way around that fear. So how we do that is, for example, by trying to heighten our self-esteem, or by, they've also found that we use culture to do that. So when we're exposed to cues of dying or death, that we become more nationalistic, we hold our culture in higher esteem, hold stronger beliefs about that. So that makes me think that it's not only what's called religion, but also maybe religion in the way of I could live on in something else, a book that I've written or the culture that I've been part of. I've been a good citizen, something like that. Um, by people's memory about me, also makes me think, yeah, there's a lot of ways that that can express itself. And how do you, because you don't even have to believe in afterlife to sort of believe in it by how
Exactly.
you act.
And it's all future oriented in the sense of what will I be?
Yeah, and it's
What
got a
will
lot.
I become?
Yeah, it's got a lot to do with what you said, I think, with confidence and will I be able to deal with the next moment or a moment in 10 years?
Precisely. This is it. We're getting right down to that very basic fear. And that fear, you've already said it, you put it together. That's one of the reasons why people will take on belief systems, even magical belief systems, to make themselves feel better about dying. To where the noble way, the way the Buddha taught, was, oh no, you need to start looking at death. You need to start fiddling with it. You need to start carrying dead rats in your pocket. Or something. Go spend the night in the cemetery. Go look up videos of corpses and especially autopsies.
Been there.
Get to know it. That's one of the things that the Buddhist monks, they always have a collection of monks at Buddhist funerals, and so Buddhist monks have to deal with death a lot, especially in the old days. Nowadays, in the West, they've got their own system, so the Buddhists in the West, the Asian Buddhists, have to kind of fit in with what's already in place. But here in Asia, the temples are going more and more to having gas-fired crematoriums. But in the old days, the body was just there. There it was. I mean, they bring every dead body to the Wat. Where else are they going to take it? There's no morticians. So, yeah, monks have seen a lot of dead. Every monastery that I know of has at least one or two corpses and skeletons hanging on the wall. In fact, Google Thai temple bones or something like that, and you'll see just there's one temple in Chiang Mai that's got like 10,000. There is a one temple that where they had a sufficient number of water buffalo in the old days, and so they would bring the skull of the water buffalo and decorate their temple with, the whole temple is running with the skulls of dead animals. So yeah, temple life has got a lot to do with death and dealing with the death in the community, including the cremation that's often done in the back of the Wat, in an area that's kind of reserved for that sort of thing. And that one of the typical things is that they'll cut down a banana tree because the stalk of a banana tree is so wet that it doesn't typically burn. And so they'll use the banana stalks as the rigid part for them to lay the body with all the sticks and everything so it doesn't fall over. The banana trees will keep the funeral pyre from falling over. That way they can make it smaller. And then they put a lot of ghee, a lot of butter, a lot of candles. Depends upon what status the guy was, but sometimes even they'll pour expensive whiskey on. Get the thing going, and then they'll have a party all night long. Okay, so Thai culture and in the old days, humans have to deal with death, but because of our desire to stay away from death, because we don't feel good when we're around a lot of dead corpses. Humans do not like the smell of dead bodies. Don't like it. That cannibalism is a huge taboo in most places. Here in Thailand, the thing to do, though, if you're really noble, is don't take the body to the Wat. Take it to the back door of a Chinese restaurant.
What?
Yeah, $2 a pound. It's worth $600 or $700.
But
Make soup out of it.
That's
Now, when we talk about that, you get a really deep pit in your stomach. You don't like that idea. No, dude. It's funny on the surface, but down deep inside, nobody likes that. We don't like about dealing with death. This is the point, then, about that first fetter. Until you're willing to start dealing with your own death, you're not going to get anywhere on the path of the Buddha, because you'll always have that fear of death. And that fear of death also keeps one in victim's position. That this is what the hero mentality is all about, and this is one of the reasons why good martial artists, when they are good enough to survive their occupation to the point of retirement, they really make good monks in temples. Why? Because they've already had to deal with a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't have a chance to deal with, like be here now or get busted in the face. So they learn to be here now. They learn to pay attention. They've got good mindfulness, but they also go into battle fearlessly. So they begin to handle their whole life fearlessly.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I think I'm not seeing it entirely clearly, but my fear seems to be more about being alive and being like in, for example, if I imagine I would go on a long trip to Asia and that might put me back in my career life in Europe, and that might mean I have less social contacts or less income and so on. And then the feeling is about being miserable while alive instead of dead, it seems. Like that's a fear. That's the,
Okay, so what you're saying is that you could not possibly trade Western lifestyle for joyous poverty in Asia.
yeah, I guess it's a fear that I could not do that, yeah.
Ah, well, that's what you need to do right there on your cushion, is to start getting out of that fear, to recognize fear when it comes up and say, I don't have to be afraid. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm a champion. I can clean out the mind. Because that fear, when it's in the mind, is nothing but a hindrance. It's a feeling of not liking, a feeling of dread, a feeling of want to escape that has manifested itself in various thoughts. But the question is, can you see that fear as fear? I see you, Mr. Fear. I'm the champion here. You're not in charge. And so that's that first point of the noble path. And it's also that first part about the first fetter, is that there is really no you to take care of anyway. The you that you're trying to take care of now is a you way off into the future someplace.
What about people around me that, for example, my parents might be very disappointed and sad of me
You
being.
don't have to make any choices or tell them anything. This is not about them. This is how you feel when you are sitting there thinking about going to Thailand. And that fear comes up. That's the time to deal with that fear right then. Aha, I see you, Mr. Fear. Let me take control. You are not going to run my life. You are not going to sit here and have my thoughts go blah, 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 blah while I'm feeling fearful. You can check that fear. You can see that fear. And you can say, that's not going to make me afraid. It's not going to pull me out of a state of satisfaction and joy.
Can that be enough to
It's enough for this moment. It's enough for right now. It's enough to give you confidence that you can do it again.
Right, yeah.
You all right now? You're getting it. Yeah, it's okay. That's the whole point. Is that you're so future oriented,
Ah,
and you make yourself fearful with thinking about the future.
no.
And you
One
can
part.
also recognize that if you're piling on next life and past life on that, on top of all of that, look how you can work yourself up into a state that's really, really difficult then to discard so that you can come to a state of joy in this present moment. Never mind, Mr. Fear. Never mind the fear of this life's death. Never mind what's going to happen 10 years from now. Never mind whether I'm going to starve to death if I go to Thailand or I'm not going to be the world's best psychologist. Because you can think about all kinds of things and make yourself afraid or anxious or in need of doing something. The question is, can you see that stuff in this moment and work with it directly? Aha, I see you. You're not going to run my life. I'm going to sit here and be happy instead of being fearful.
It's so hard to see clearly. Like one
You
part of
don't have to see that far into the future. See right now. You don't have to see 3 minutes ahead. Two will do.
won't that make me
It's not
irresponsible?
going to make you anything except happy right now. Stop trying to plan for the future and start enjoying the moment. Yeah, but won't that make me?
Mm.
So we were originally talking about the first fetter and why it's important for us to change our orientation from long past and long future into this present moment. And in this present moment, whether you've got a soul to be reborn or not is irrelevant. It's not part of the question. What's going to happen if you go to Thailand is irrelevant. That's not the question. What happens if you get a really big degree or not in psychology? Again, that's not the question. The question is, can you be here now? The question is, can you see the fear that you give yourself by thinking about the future? And come and enjoy this moment. You're not allowing yourself to enjoy the moment because you think that if I enjoy the moment now, that's going to screw up the future. Is that not true?
Yeah, it seems realistic that you can build up and build more favorable circumstances around you by investing or working for those circumstances, like I don't know, an own practice or a degree in this stuff.
Yes, that's the magical model. That's the world's model. There is a goal out there, and you do this and you do that, and then you'll experience the results of that goal in the future. And you're doing it again.
Isn't that also scientific? Like it's worked for many
No,
people.
no, no, we're not talking about it at that level. You're still off into the future again. The question is, what are you doing right now? Can you enjoy this moment right now?
Isn't that a bit imbalanced?
Well, it certainly is, because right now you're really imbalanced into the sense of fear, anxiety, planning for the future, not being satisfied, and you're tipping the balance over to, oh, this is nice. This moment is a good one. Finally, I'm getting some success. Look at all the years that I've worked and I never got anything out of it. And all I have to do is to stop trying and just enjoy. To change that frame of reference from future oriented to right now is a major change. Change of reference. Why would you meditate? Because it's enjoyable. What other reasons would you meditate? To get something in the future? What would you get in the future? Enjoyment, right? What would you want out of meditation? Then why not have that right now?
Like, I guess I also want to lay a foundation for future happiness, or not?
Well, the foundation that you're laying for future is the skill of sati, the skill of right effort, the skill of a winner's attitude as opposed to being a loser. Are you going to plan your future as a loser so that you wind up being a really good loser? Are you going to develop the skill of attitude of being a winner? And if you're already a winner, then what do you need to be more of a winner? You're already a winner. You're always looking at it from the position of dissatisfaction. Give yourself some satisfaction. Give yourself some joy. Experiment with enjoying this present moment without it having implications for later. Doesn't have to have any implications at all, but I've already showed you 4 or 5 skills. By practicing this over and over again, you're developing skills that you will appreciate in the future. But you'll develop those so that you use them as skills in that particular moment of time, without thinking in that particular time about its future. So this is where we start. No matter how obstructed the mind is, I can clean that stuff out and come back to this present moment and be here now joyfully. And one of the obstructions you have would be, well, what about going to college? Or what about going to Thailand? Or what about this? Or what about that? The whatabouts is suffering. And you can catch yourself doing whatabouts and catch yourself feeling the way that you do about all of these, well, what about this and that? So that you can come to enjoy your moment.
It feels like letting go of a whole.
For the moment, not permanently, just let go of it for the moment.
But then in the next moment, I gotta let go again.
Well, if you have the skills to remember to,
And if I
but
don't,
remembering you're not losing anything that you need. What you're losing is all the pain about wanting things that you think you need that you don't have.
it's like an armor, like these thoughts of the future, like I need to hold on to that to.
But how do you feel when you let go of that?
Disoriented.
All right, go with I see you, Mr. Disorientation. And I'm still the champion here. I'm still the boss. You're not my boss. You're not the boss of me, Mr. Disorientation.
Mm.
And that way you can look at that disorientation. You can get a feel for it. That you do not have to hide that disorientation with a belief system about the future.
Mm.
This is what it's all about, to be here now without having any regard for the future. Just be here now. Let the future take care of itself. You've been spending your years and years and years planning for the future, and what do you get? More plans for the future. But you're not satisfied yet. Why not take a moment at least and be satisfied? And if you like it, you'll have another. You can get your satisfaction directly. You do not have to do anything to get it.
Mm. Thinking was just there.
Well, think about this. In fact, we'll put this one on, and you should review this tape again.
Yeah, I think so.
Because this is a major change. This is the first big step onto the path of Dhamma. Is, can you do this or not? The answer is yes, you can, but you're going to have to start investigating feelings rather than clouding them with ideas about the future, so that you don't have to deal with the way that you actually feel, which are using the word disoriented. Become familiar with being disoriented. If you become really, really familiar with it, you'll be oriented in disorientation, and that's a win. Because that's really life, to be able to be oriented and solidly firm in this world that is just a total chaos.
Mm. All right.
All right? Excellent, Christian. One more thing, and then we'll go. And that is, what you're going through, everybody's got to go through. Welcome to the club.
Thank you. That's a good reminder.
Everybody's got to go through this. This is actually the fear of death that you're beginning to deal with.
All right. I'll spend some time with that today.
Enjoy. Enjoy.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.